Question 1. When auditing a medical device manufacturer's quality management system, an auditor is reviewing the effectiveness of their supplier monitoring program as required by ISO 13485-2016. The manufacturer has implemented a system where suppliers are categorized based on risk, and critical component suppliers undergo quarterly performance reviews, while suppliers of non-critical items are assessed annually. However, the auditor notes that the performance review for a critical supplier of a biocompatible material used in an implantable device revealed a trend of increasing particulate contamination over the last 2 review periods, yet the supplier remains approved without any documented evidence of a specific corrective action plan from the supplier or a robust risk assessment by the manufacturer to determine the impact on the final device's safety. Which aspect of the supplier monitoring process is most likely deficient, indicating a potential nonconformity with ISO 13485-2016. Option A. Inadequate frequency of performance monitoring for suppliers of non-critical components, which should be conducted at least semi-annually. Option B. Failure to adequately reevaluate or suspend the approval of a supplier when their performance indicates a significant deviation from specified requirements, particularly concerning critical components impacting patient safety. Option C. Lack of a formal supplier quality agreement for suppliers of ancillary services, such as calibration of test equipment. Option D. Insufficient documentation of the initial supplier selection criteria, which are not detailed in the quality manual. The correct answer is B. Failure to adequately reevaluate or suspend the approval of a supplier when their performance indicates a significant deviation from specified requirements, particularly concerning critical components impacting patient safety. Explanation. The core of effective supplier monitoring in ISO 13485-2016, particularly for medical devices, lies in establishing and maintaining a robust system that ensures purchased products and services consistently meet specified requirements. Clause 7.4.1 Purchasing process and Clause 7.4.3 Verification of purchased product are foundational. An auditor would assess how a manufacturer defines the criteria for supplier evaluation, selection, monitoring of performance, and re-evaluation. This process must be based on the supplier's ability to provide products and services that conform to the specified requirements, considering factors such as the potential impact of the supplied product on the final medical device's quality, regulatory compliance, and patient safety. Furthermore, the organization must establish criteria for the approval of suppliers, including any quality agreements. The monitoring of supplier performance should be documented, and if a supplier fails to meet criteria, corrective actions must be implemented, potentially leading to re-evaluation or termination of the relationship. The focus is on a proactive, risk-based approach to ensure the integrity of the supply chain, which directly impacts the safety and effectiveness of the medical device. An auditor would look for evidence that the organization has a defined methodology for assessing supplier performance against agreed-upon criteria, which could include metrics like on-time delivery, defect rates, responsiveness to issues, and adherence to quality agreements. This systematic approach ensures that the medical device manufacturer maintains control over its entire product realization process, from component sourcing to final product release, aligning with regulatory expectations for medical device quality management systems. Question 2. An auditor is reviewing the work environment controls for a manufacturer of sterile implantable devices. The organization has documented procedures for cleanroom gowning, air particle counts, and temperature/humidity monitoring. However, during the audit, the auditor observes that several personnel in the controlled manufacturing area are wearing personal electronic devices, e.g., smartwatches, earbuds, that are not part of the approved personal protective equipment. Considering the specific requirements for medical device manufacturing environments, what is the most significant implication of this observation for the auditor's assessment of compliance with ISO 13485-2016, Clause 6.4? Option A. Potential for introduction of non-specified contaminants or electromagnetic interference that could affect device functionality or sterility assurance. Option B. Non-compliance with general workplace safety standards, unrelated to product quality. Option C. Violation of employee personal privacy regulations due to the monitoring of personal electronic devices. Option D. Inefficiency in manufacturing processes caused by employee distraction from personal devices. Correct answer is A. Potential for introduction of non-specified contaminants or electromagnetic interference that could affect device functionality or sterility assurance. Explanation: ISO 13485-2016, in its Clause 6.4, addresses the requirements for the work environment. The standard mandates that the organization must determine and maintain the necessary facilities, including workspace and associated controls, equipment and support services, to achieve conformity of medical devices. This encompasses ensuring that conditions such as cleanliness, contamination control, and environmental monitoring are suitable for the intended processes and the nature of the medical device being manufactured. The focus is on preventing contamination and mix-ups that could compromise device safety and effectiveness. For an auditor, evaluating the work environment involves verifying that documented procedures are in place and effectively implemented to control environmental factors relevant to product quality. This includes assessing the adequacy of controls for dust, microbial contamination, temperature, humidity, and light, as appropriate for the specific medical device and its manufacturing stages. The auditor would look for evidence that the organization has identified environmental risks and implemented controls to mitigate them, as well as records of environmental monitoring and any corrective actions taken. This aligns with the overarching principle of risk management embedded throughout the ISO 13485 standard, ensuring that potential hazards arising from the manufacturing environment are systematically addressed. The organization must also consider the requirements for personnel hygiene and the control of hazardous substances or materials used in the manufacturing process. Question 3. During an audit of a medical device manufacturer's quality management system, an auditor is evaluating the effectiveness of their data analysis processes as required by ISO 13485-2016. The organization has presented reports detailing customer complaints, internal audit findings, and process monitoring data. What is the auditor's primary focus when assessing the quality of this data analysis to ensure compliance and drive improvement? Option A. The completeness of the data collection process, ensuring all possible data points related to product and process performance have been captured. Option B. The statistical methodologies employed in the analysis, verifying adherence to industry-standard statistical process control techniques. Option C. The extent to which the analyzed data has led to documented evidence of systemic improvements or the implementation of effective preventive actions to address identified trends or potential risks. Option D. The frequency with which data analysis reports are generated and distributed to all relevant departmental managers within the organization. The correct answer is C. The extent to which the analyzed data has led to documented evidence of systemic improvements or the implementation of effective preventive actions to address identified trends or potential risks. Explanation: the fundamental principle behind effective data analysis for quality improvement within a medical device QMS, as mandated by ISO 13485-2016, is to move beyond mere identification of nonconformities. The standard emphasizes the use of data to identify trends, assess the effectiveness of the QMS, and drive proactive improvements. When an auditor reviews data analysis activities, they are looking for evidence that the organization is not just collecting data, but is actively using it to understand the performance of its processes, products, and the QMS as a whole. This includes analyzing data from various sources such as customer feedback, process monitoring, product performance, and internal audits. The goal is to determine if the organization can demonstrate a clear link between the analyzed data and subsequent corrective and preventive actions, COPPA, or other improvement initiatives. A robust data analysis process will highlight areas where the QMS is performing well, and more importantly, identify potential risks or areas of weakness before they lead to significant issues. This proactive approach aligns with the risk-based thinking integral to medical device regulation and quality management. Therefore, the auditor's primary concern is the demonstration of actionable insights derived from the data that lead to tangible improvements in product quality and QMS effectiveness, rather than simply reporting statistical summaries. Question 4. Consider a medical device manufacturer developing a new implantable cardiac rhythm management system where the embedded software plays a critical role in pacing algorithms and patient monitoring. During an audit, the quality assurance team reviews the validation plan for this software. Which of the following elements is most crucial to include in this validation plan to ensure compliance with ISO 13485, 2016, and relevant regulations like the FDA's Quality System Regulation, 21 CFR Part 820, concerning the software's intended use and performance? Option A. A comprehensive list of all potential cybersecurity vulnerabilities identified during the development phase and the proposed mitigation strategies, without explicit linkage to validation test cases. Option B. A detailed description of the software architecture, including algorithms, data flow, and interface specifications, linked directly to user needs and intended uses, with clearly defined validation test cases and acceptance criteria for each critical function. Option C. A schedule for post-market surveillance activities and complaint handling procedures related to software malfunctions, irrespective of the initial validation scope. Option D. A historical overview of previous software validation efforts for similar device types, focusing on lessons learned rather than specific test protocols for the current device. Correct answer is B. A detailed description of the software architecture, including algorithms, data flow, and interface specifications, linked directly to user needs and intended uses, with clearly defined validation test cases and acceptance criteria for each critical function. Explanation. The core principle behind validation planning in ISO 13485, 2016, particularly concerning software used in medical devices, is to ensure that the software performs as intended throughout its lifecycle and meets user needs and intended uses. This requires a systematic approach to defining the validation scope, methodology, responsibilities, and acceptance criteria. Clause 7, 5, 6, Validation of processes, and Annex A, 5, Application of regulatory requirements, highlight the importance of validation for processes, where the output cannot be fully verified by subsequent monitoring or measurement. Software validation is a critical aspect of this, as it falls under the scope of process validation when it's integral to the device's performance or safety. A robust validation plan should encompass all stages of the software lifecycle, from design and development to maintenance and decommissioning, ensuring that all requirements, including regulatory ones, are met. The plan must clearly outline the validation strategy, detailing the specific tests, the expected results, the resources required, and the documentation needed to demonstrate compliance. It should also consider the risk management activities undertaken for the software, as per ISO 14971, and how these risks are mitigated through validation activities. The plan should be approved by appropriate personnel before execution, and the results documented thoroughly to provide objective evidence of validation. The objective is to establish documented evidence that the software consistently meets its specified requirements and intended uses, thereby ensuring the safety and effectiveness of the medical device. Question 5. A medical device manufacturer specializing in implantable cardiac rhythm management devices receives an increasing number of customer complaints regarding premature battery depletion in a specific model. Regulatory bodies in key markets have also flagged similar concerns through post-market surveillance reports. The manufacturer has a documented procedure for complaint handling and CAPA. During an audit, it becomes apparent that while individual complaints are logged and investigated, there is no systematic analysis of aggregated complaint data to identify trends or potential systemic issues that could necessitate a field safety corrective action or a design modification. Which of the following actions, if absent, represents the most significant deficiency in the manufacturer's quality management system concerning their responsibilities under ISO 13485, 2016, and relevant global regulations for managing product safety issues? Option A. Insufficient resources allocated to the customer service department for responding to inquiries. Option B. Failure to implement a comprehensive feedback loop from complaint analysis to design and development processes for proactive risk mitigation. Option C. Absence of a formal process for validating the cleaning and sterilization procedures of return devices. Option D. Inadequate documentation of individual complaint investigations and resolution steps. The correct answer is B. Failure to implement a comprehensive feedback loop from complaint analysis to design and development processes for proactive risk mitigation. Explanation. The core responsibility of a medical device manufacturer under ISO 13485-2016 is to establish and maintain a quality management system that ensures the consistency and safety of their products. This includes a robust process for handling complaints and adverse events, as mandated by regulatory requirements such as the EU Medical Device Regulation, MDR, or the U.S. Food and Drug Administration's FDA Quality System Regulation, 21 CFR Part 820. The standard emphasizes the manufacturer's obligation to take corrective and preventive actions, COPPA, based on the analysis of complaint data, field safety corrective actions, FSCA, and other relevant information. Specifically, ISO 13485-2016 Clause 8.2.1 Feedback and 8.5.2 Corrective Action outline the need for a system to collect and review feedback, including complaints, and to initiate investigations and implement actions to prevent recurrence. The manufacturer must ensure that the effectiveness of these actions is verified. Furthermore, Clause 7.1 Planning of product realization, and 7.3 Design and development indirectly support this by requiring controls throughout the product lifecycle, including post-market surveillance, which is informed by complaint data. The manufacturer's ultimate responsibility is to demonstrate control over the entire product lifecycle, ensuring that any identified issues are addressed to maintain product safety and compliance. This proactive approach to managing nonconformities and customer feedback is paramount for a medical device manufacturer. Question 6. During an audit of a medical device manufacturer producing a novel non-invasive implantable blood glucose sensor, the auditor reviews the design verification records for the device's core sensing element. The design input specifies a target accuracy of /PM5 compared to a gold standard laboratory method under simulated physiological conditions. The verification test report indicates that 95% of the readings from the sensor prototype fell within /PM7 of the gold standard. The remaining 5% of readings were outside this range, with some showing deviations up to /PM10 The auditor also notes that the verification plan did not explicitly define the statistical methods for evaluating the data or the acceptance criteria for the entire population of test results beyond the initial target. Considering the requirements of ISO 13485-2016 and the principles of robust design verification, what is the most significant deficiency identified in the design verification process for this sensing element? Option A. The verification testing did not sufficiently address the device's electromagnetic compatibility, EMC, as required by IEC 60601-1-2. Option B. The verification plan failed to include biocompatibility testing according to ISO 10993, which is a mandatory requirement for implantable devices. Option C. The verification results did not demonstrate that the design output met the specified design input requirements for accuracy, as a portion of the results exceeded the acceptable deviation. Option D. The design verification report did not adequately document the design and development inputs for the sensing element. The correct answer is C. The verification results did not demonstrate that the design output met the specified design input requirements for accuracy, as a portion of the results exceeded the acceptable deviation. Explanation. Design verification is a critical phase in the medical device development lifecycle, ensuring that the design output meets the design input requirements. ISO 13485-2016, specifically in Clause 7.3.6, mandates that verification of the design must be performed to ensure that the design and development outputs meet the design and development input requirements. This process confirms that the device has been correctly designed. Design verification activities often involve testing, simulations, or other objective evidence to confirm that the design specifications are met. For a novel implantable sensor designed to monitor blood glucose levels non-invasively, a comprehensive verification plan would be essential. This plan should encompass verification of the sensor's accuracy against established clinical standards, its biocompatibility according to ISO 10993 series, Its electrical safety, as per IEC 60601-1. Its electromagnetic compatibility, EMC, as per IEC 60601-1-2, and the reliability and durability of its materials and components under simulated physiological conditions. The verification activities must demonstrate that the design outputs, such as the final device specifications, manufacturing processes, and labeling, accurately reflect the intended use and user needs established during the design input phase. The objective is to provide objective evidence that the design outputs meet the design inputs. Question 7. Consider a scenario where an auditor, conducting a surveillance audit of a medical device manufacturer producing sterile implantable devices, uncovers evidence suggesting a potential lapse in the routine environmental monitoring of a critical cleanroom area. Further investigation reveals that the last documented validation of the environmental monitoring program was completed 3 years prior, exceeding the manufacturer's own stated revalidation frequency of 18 months, and that critical parameters for particulate and microbial counts were intermittently exceeded during the past quarter without documented root cause analysis or corrective action. Which of the following ethical obligations is paramount for the auditor in this situation, given the potential impact on product sterility and patient safety? Option A. Advise the auditee to immediately halt all production of the affected product lines until a full investigation can be completed, regardless of the auditor's authority to issue such a directive. Option B. Gently suggest to the auditee's quality manager that they might want to review their environmental monitoring program and revalidation schedule at their earliest convenience, without formally documenting the specific findings. Option C. Focus the audit on other areas of the quality management system to avoid creating undue stress for the auditee, and plan to follow up on the environmental monitoring during the next scheduled audit. Option D. Immediately document the findings as a major nonconformity, clearly articulating the potential risk to product sterility and the breach of the manufacturer's own procedures and regulatory expectations, and ensure this is communicated to auditee management for prompt corrective action. Correct answer is D. Immediately document the findings as a major nonconformity, clearly articulating the potential risk to product sterility and the breach of the manufacturer's own procedures and regulatory expectations, and ensure this is communicated to auditee management for prompt corrective action. Explanation. The core ethical principle guiding an ISO 13485 auditor, particularly when dealing with potential nonconformities that could impact patient safety or regulatory compliance under frameworks like the EU MDR or FDA regulations, is to maintain objectivity and integrity. When an auditor discovers a critical deviation, such as a failure in the sterilization validation process for a Class Roman III implantable device, the immediate ethical imperative is to ensure that this information is appropriately documented and communicated to the auditee's management. This ensures that the auditee can take corrective action to prevent harm to patients and comply with regulatory requirements. Withholding or downplaying such a finding would be a severe breach of professional ethics and could have serious legal and patient safety consequences. The auditor's responsibility extends beyond merely identifying nonconformities. It includes ensuring that the quality management system effectively addresses risks and complies with applicable regulatory standards, thereby protecting public health. The auditor must act in a manner that upholds the credibility of the auditing profession and the integrity of the ISO 13485 standard itself. Question 8. When auditing a medical device manufacturer that operates in the United States and whose devices collect, transmit, or store patient health information, what specific regulatory framework, beyond the direct clauses of ISO 13485, 2016, must an auditor ensure is integrated into the quality management system to address the protection of this sensitive data? Option A. Food and Drug Administration FDA Good Manufacturing Practices GMP 21 CFR Part 820. Option B. General Data Protection Regulation GDPR. Option C. Medical Device Regulation MDR, European Union. Option D. Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act HIPAA. Correct answer is D. Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act HIPAA. Explanation. ISO 13485 2016 mandates robust quality management systems for medical devices, including the handling of sensitive information. While the standard itself does not directly impose HIPAA, Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act, requirements, necessitates compliance with applicable regulatory requirements. In the United States, HIPAA is a critical regulation governing the privacy and security of protected health information. Medical device manufacturers, particularly those whose devices collect, transmit, or store PHI, must ensure their QMS processes, including design, development, manufacturing, and post-market surveillance, align with HIPAA security rule and privacy rule. This involves implementing administrative, physical, and technical safeguards to protect PHI. For an auditor assessing a medical device company's ISO 13485 compliance, understanding the intersection of these regulations is crucial. The auditor must verify that the company has identified all applicable regulatory requirements, including those related to data privacy and security, and has established documented procedures to meet them. This includes evidence of risk assessments concerning PHI, implementation of appropriate controls, and training for personnel handling such data. The failure to address HIPAA in the context of PHI handling within a medical device QMS would represent a significant oversight in meeting broader regulatory obligations, even if not explicitly detailed as a separate clause within ISO 13485. The focus is on the principle of meeting all relevant legal and regulatory requirements, which for a U.S.-based or U.S. market-serving medical device company handling PHI unequivocally includes HIPAA. Question 9. An auditor is reviewing the validation documentation for a new software system designed to manage and monitor the sterilization cycles of reusable surgical instruments. The software interfaces directly with the sterilizer hardware, controlling critical parameters and recording cycle data. The manufacturer claims the software significantly enhances efficiency and ensures compliance with reprocessing guidelines. During the audit, the auditor finds that while the software correctly logs most cycle parameters, there are instances where minor discrepancies exist between the logged data and the physical readings from calibrated sensors within the sterilizer for non-critical parameters like ambient temperature within the control room. The software's intended use is solely for controlling and monitoring the sterilization process itself. What is the most appropriate auditor conclusion regarding the software validation in this scenario, considering ISO 13485, 2016 requirements? Option A. The software validation is likely inadequate because discrepancies in any logged parameter, regardless of criticality to the sterilization process, indicate a failure to demonstrate consistent performance for its intended use. Option B. The software validation may be acceptable if the discrepancies are minor, documented as known limitations, and do not impact the critical sterilization parameters or patient safety, provided the overall validation report demonstrates fitness for intended use. Option C. The software validation is sufficient as long as the software correctly controls the critical sterilization parameters, and the discrepancies are only related to non-critical environmental data that is not essential for the sterilization outcome. Option D. The software validation is invalid because any deviation from expected data, even for non-critical parameters, demonstrates a fundamental flaw in the software's data integrity and must be rectified before the validation can be considered complete. Correct answer is A. The software validation is likely inadequate because discrepancies in any logged parameter, regardless of criticality to the sterilization process, indicate a failure to demonstrate consistent performance for its intended use. Explanation: the validation of software used in medical devices, particularly when it's intended to be used in a sterile processing environment for critical medical equipment, requires a robust approach that considers the software's intended use and its impact on patient safety. ISO 13485, 2016, Clause 7, 5, 6 emphasizes the need for validation of processes where the resulting output cannot be verified by subsequent monitoring or measurement. Software, especially that which controls or monitors critical functions like sterilization parameters, falls under this. The validation process must demonstrate that the software consistently performs according to its specified requirements and is suitable for its intended use. This involves a comprehensive plan that includes design, development, testing, and deployment phases, all documented to provide objective evidence. For software controlling sterilization, this means verifying its ability to accurately manage temperature, pressure, time, and chemical concentrations, and to record these parameters reliably. Any deviation could lead to non-sterile devices, posing a significant risk of infection. Therefore, the validation must confirm the software's accuracy, reliability, and the integrity of its data logging and reporting functions, ensuring it meets all regulatory requirements and the manufacturer's specifications for patient safety. Question 10. When compiling the final audit report for a medical device manufacturer's quality management system, which element is considered the most crucial for ensuring the report's validity and utility in driving corrective actions and continuous improvement efforts, aligning with the principles of ISO 13485-2016? Option A. A comprehensive list of all personnel interviewed during the audit, with their job titles and departments. Option B. A summary of the auditor's personal opinions on the overall quality culture of the organization. Option C. A projection of future regulatory compliance risks based on industry trends, not directly observed during the audit. Option D. Detailed descriptions of objective evidence supporting all audit findings, including nonconformities and observations. Correct answer is D. Detailed descriptions of objective evidence supporting all audit findings, including nonconformities and observations. Explanation. The auditor's report is a critical output of the audit process, serving as the formal record of findings and conclusions. ISO 13485, 2016, while not prescribing specific report content in minute detail, mandates that records be maintained to demonstrate conformity. Clause 4.2.3 Control of documents and Clause 4.2.4 Control of records are foundational. More directly, Clause 8.2.4 Monitoring and measurement of processes and Clause 8.2.5 Monitoring and measurement of product necessitate evidence gathering and analysis. The audit report should clearly delineate the scope of the audit, the criteria against which conformity was assessed, e.g. ISO 13485, 2016, relevant regulations like the EU MDR or FDA 21 CFR Part 820, the audit objectives, the audit team, the dates and locations of the audit activities, and the audit findings. Findings should be objective, based on verifiable evidence, and categorized appropriately, e.g. nonconformities, observations, opportunities for improvement. The report must also include the overall conclusion of the audit regarding the effectiveness of the quality management system. The purpose is to provide actionable information to the auditee and relevant stakeholders, facilitating corrective action and continuous improvement. Therefore, the inclusion of objective evidence supporting each finding is paramount for the report's validity and utility. Without this, findings are merely unsubstantiated assertions. Question 11. An auditor is reviewing the purchasing controls for a Class Roman II implantable medical device. The manufacturer relies on an external supplier for a specialized biocompatible coating applied to a critical metal component. The supplier has provided a certificate of analysis for each batch of coating material and has a quality agreement in place that references their ISO 9001 certification. However, recent internal audits have indicated a trend of minor deviations in the coating thickness, which, while not causing immediate nonconformance upon receipt, could potentially impact long-term device performance. Considering the criticality of the component and the observed trend, which of the following actions by the manufacturer would best demonstrate adherence to ISO 13485, 2016 requirements for controlling suppliers of critical materials? Option A. Performing a risk assessment on the potential impact of coating thickness variations on the long-term performance of the implantable device and documenting the findings. Option B. Conducting a thorough on-site audit of the supplier's coating process, including verification of their process controls, calibration records, and personnel training for critical coating application steps. Option C. Increasing the frequency of incoming inspection for the coated components to include more stringent dimensional and visual checks to catch any deviations before further processing. Option D. Requiring the supplier to update their quality agreement to include a clause mandating immediate notification of any internal process deviations, regardless of whether they result in non-conforming product upon shipment. The correct answer is B. Conducting a thorough on-site audit of the supplier's coating process, including verification of their process controls, calibration records, and personnel training for critical coding application steps. Explanation: the core principle of ISO 13485, 2016 Clause 7. 4. Purchasing is to ensure that purchased products conform to specified purchase requirements. This involves establishing controls for purchasing information, purchasing processes, and verification of purchased product. When a supplier is identified as providing a critical component for a medical device, the organization must ensure that the supplier's quality management system is capable of meeting the specified requirements. This often necessitates a more rigorous approach than simply relying on supplier self-declaration or a basic quality agreement. Auditing the supplier's facility and processes directly is a robust method to verify their ability to consistently produce conforming product. This proactive approach allows for the identification and mitigation of potential risks before they manifest as non-conforming product entering the supply chain. While other methods like incoming inspection and supplier performance monitoring are important, direct supplier auditing provides the most comprehensive assurance for critical components, especially when considering the regulatory environment and the potential impact on patient safety. The effectiveness of the supplier's own quality system is paramount for critical inputs. Question 12. A medical device manufacturer specializing in implantable neurostimulators relies on a critical supplier for the sterile packaging of its finished products. This packaging must maintain sterility for the life of the device and withstand various sterilization methods. To ensure ongoing compliance with ISO 13485-2016, particularly concerning supplier control Clause 7. 4. And to mitigate risks associated with product sterility breaches, the manufacturer plans to conduct an assessment at the supplier's manufacturing site. What type of audit is most appropriate for the manufacturer to undertake in this specific context? Option A, certification audit. Option B, supplier audit. Option C, regulatory audit. Option D, internal audit. The correct answer is B, supplier audit. Explanation: the core of this question lies in understanding the distinct purposes and scopes of different audit types within a medical device quality management system governed by ISO 13485-2016. Internal audits, mandated by Clause 8, 2, 4, are conducted by the organization itself or by a third party on its behalf to verify that the quality management system conforms to planned arrangements, including ISO 13485-2016 and applicable regulatory requirements, and that it is effectively implemented and maintained. Supplier audits, also a critical component of supplier management as outlined in Clause 7. 4, are performed to assess the ability of suppliers to provide conforming product and services, ensuring the integrity of the supply chain. External audits, typically performed by certification bodies for initial certification, surveillance, or recertification, or by regulatory authorities, assess the overall conformity of the organization's QMS to the standard and relevant regulations. In the scenario presented, a medical device manufacturer is evaluating its supplier of sterile packaging materials. The primary objective is to confirm that the supplier's processes consistently meet the stringent requirements for sterile barrier systems, which directly impacts the safety and efficacy of the final medical device. This evaluation is focused on the supplier's operations and their ability to deliver compliant materials, not on the manufacturer's internal processes or the certification status of the manufacturer's QMS. Therefore, an audit conducted by the manufacturer at the supplier's facility to assess the supplier's manufacturing and quality control procedures for sterile packaging aligns with the definition and objective of a supplier audit. Question 13. During an audit of a medical device manufacturer's sterilization process, an auditor observes that control charts are being used to monitor critical process parameters like temperature and pressure. The process data consistently falls within the established upper and lower control limits. However, the auditor notes a pattern of increasing temperature readings over the last 10 consecutive runs, even though all readings remain within the control limits. What fundamental statistical concept is most relevant for the auditor to consider in evaluating the effectiveness of the control charting for this specific scenario? Option A, the verification of the random distribution of data points around the central tendency of the process. Option B, the statistical significance of the mean of the observed data points compared to the historical process average. Option C, the calculation of process capability indices like \CP and \CPK to assess long-term process performance. Option D, detection of trends or patterns indicative of a potential shift in process stability, even if within control limits. The correct answer is D, detection of trends or patterns indicative of a potential shift in process stability, even if within control limits. Explanation. The core principle of ISO 13485-2016, particularly concerning the application of statistical techniques, Clause 7.1.5, is to ensure that processes are capable of consistently meeting requirements. When a manufacturer uses statistical methods to monitor and control process variation, the goal is to maintain the process within acceptable limits, thereby ensuring product conformity and safety. The standard requires the identification and application of suitable statistical techniques where necessary for process validation, process monitoring, and product acceptance. In the context of process monitoring, the objective is to detect shifts or drifts in process parameters that could lead to non-conforming output before it occurs. Control charts are a fundamental tool for this purpose. They provide a visual representation of process performance over time, distinguishing between common cause variation, inherent to the process, and special cause variation, assignable to specific events. By establishing control limits based on historical data and monitoring data points against these limits, an auditor can assess if the process is stable and predictable. The correct application of control charts involves identifying the appropriate type of chart, e.g., X-bar and R, P-chart, C-chart, based on the type of data being collected, variable or attribute, and the specific process characteristic being monitored. The effectiveness of the statistical technique is judged by its ability to provide timely information for process adjustment, and its contribution to reducing variability and preventing nonconformities. The question probes the auditor's understanding of how statistical techniques, specifically control charts, contribute to the overall quality management system by enabling proactive process control and defect prevention, which is crucial for medical device safety and efficacy. Question 14. When auditing a medical device manufacturer's quality management system, QMS, for adherence to ISO 13485-2016, what is the fundamental objective of applying statistical methods to process monitoring and control activities, as mandated by the standard? Option A. Optimize marketing strategies by analyzing customer feedback patterns without direct correlation to product performance. Option B. To establish objective evidence of process conformity and effectiveness for regulatory compliance and continuous improvement. Option C. To predict future market demand for specific medical device models based on historical sales data. Option D. To solely quantify the number of defects found during production inspections for historical record keeping. The correct answer is B. To establish objective evidence of process conformity and effectiveness for regulatory compliance and continuous improvement. Explanation. The question asks about the primary purpose of applying statistical methods in a medical device quality management system, QMS, under ISO 13485-2016. ISO 13485-2016, specifically in clauses like 7.1, 5 validation of processes, 8.2, 1 internal audit, and 8.2.3 monitoring and measurement of processes, emphasizes the need for objective evidence to demonstrate conformity and effectiveness. Statistical techniques are tools to achieve this by providing a systematic way to understand process variability, identify trends, and make data-driven decisions. The goal is not merely to collect data, but to analyze it to ensure that processes consistently produce conforming products and to drive improvement. Understanding process capability, identifying the root causes of nonconformities, and validating process effectiveness all rely on appropriate statistical analysis. Therefore, the most encompassing and accurate purpose is to provide objective evidence of process conformity and effectiveness, which directly supports the overall QMS objectives and regulatory requirements. Question 15. A medical device manufacturer producing sterile syringes discovers a batch where the terminal sterilization process parameters, specifically the exposure time, deviated from the validated process by 15% below the specified minimum. An auditor reviewing the nonconformity report finds that the investigation focused solely on the operator's error in setting the timer. Which aspect of the investigation, according to ISO 13485-2016, is most likely to have been inadequately addressed to prevent recurrence? Option A. The corrective action was too complex to implement, making it difficult to verify its effectiveness in preventing future deviations. Option B. The investigation did not adequately document the impact of the deviation on patient safety, which is a prerequisite for any corrective action. Option C. The root cause analysis was too detailed, leading to an overemphasis on minor contributing factors rather than the primary failure. Option D. Failure to identify systemic issues contributing to the operator error, such as inadequate process controls or insufficient training reinforcement. Correct answer is D. Failure to identify systemic issues contributing to the operator error, such as inadequate process controls or insufficient training reinforcement. Explanation. The investigation of nonconformities within a medical device quality management system, as guided by ISO 13485-2016, necessitates a thorough root cause analysis to prevent recurrence. When a nonconformity is identified, such as a deviation in the sterilization process for a surgical implant, the quality management system requires a systematic approach to determine the underlying reasons. This involves examining all relevant data, including process parameters, personnel training records, equipment calibration logs, and material specifications. The goal is not merely to identify the immediate cause, but to uncover the fundamental factors that allowed the nonconformity to occur. For instance, if the sterilization temperature was recorded as being outside the specified range, the investigation would delve into why the equipment malfunctioned, why the deviation was not detected sooner, and whether the training of the personnel operating the equipment was adequate. The effectiveness of the corrective action taken is then verified to ensure it addresses the identified root cause and prevents similar issues in the future. This aligns with the principles of continuous improvement inherent in quality management systems. The process emphasizes understanding the system's weaknesses rather than simply assigning blame. Question 16. During an audit of a medical device manufacturer's manufacturing process controls, an auditor reviews electronic records for a critical sterilization step. The software used records parameters such as temperature, pressure, and cycle time. While the software displays the recorded values, the auditor notes that there is no explicit audit trail feature that logs who made entries, when modifications occurred, or the original values before any potential edits. Considering the principles of data integrity crucial for regulatory compliance, such as those underpinning good manufacturing practices, GMP, and ISO 13485-2016, what is the primary deficiency an auditor would identify in this system concerning the reliability of the recorded data? Option A. Lack of demonstrable data attribution and a complete, unalterable history of recorded values. Option B. Overly complex user interface leading to potential data entry errors by operators. Option C. Insufficient validation of the sterilization process parameters themselves. Option D. Absence of real-time data backup procedures for the manufacturing system. The correct answer is A. Lack of demonstrable data attribution and a complete, unalterable history of recorded values. Explanation. The core principle of data integrity, often summarized by the Alcoa Plus framework, emphasizes that data should be attributable, legible, contemporaneous, original, and accurate. Attributable means that the data recorded can be traced back to the person who performed the action or made the decision. Legible ensures that the data is readable and permanent. Contemporaneous signifies that the data is recorded at the time of the event or as close to it as possible. Original means that the data is the first capture of the information. Accurate ensures that the data is free from errors and truthfully represents the event. The plus often includes concepts like complete, consistent, enduring, and available. For an auditor reviewing a medical device manufacturer's quality management system under ISO 13485-2016, particularly concerning design and development records or post-market surveillance data, verifying the integrity of electronic records is paramount. This involves ensuring that audit trails are maintained, access controls are robust, and data is not altered or deleted without proper authorization and documentation. The scenario presented highlights a potential gap in the system if the software used for recording critical process parameters, does not inherently support the generation of a complete and immutable audit trail. Without such a trail, it becomes difficult for an auditor to establish attribution for changes or to confirm the contemporaneous nature of all recorded data points. This directly impacts the ability to verify the accuracy and completeness of the records, which are foundational to demonstrating compliance with regulatory requirements and the QMS. The question probes the auditor's understanding of how to assess the robustness of electronic record-keeping systems in relation to data integrity principles, specifically looking for evidence of controls that ensure the reliability and trustworthiness of the data throughout its life cycle. Question 17. An auditor reviewing a Canadian medical device manufacturer's quality management system, which produces Class Roman III implantable devices, needs to assess the integration of ISO 13485, 2016 requirements with the Canadian Medical Devices Regulations, CMDR. Which of the following audit findings would indicate a significant deficiency in the manufacturer's adherence to both standards regarding post-market surveillance and incident reporting? Option A. The quality manual outlines a commitment to comply with ISO 13485-2016 and the CMDR, but the detailed procedures for handling customer feedback do not explicitly mention the need to assess feedback for potential reportability to Health Canada under the CMDR. Option B. The manufacturer maintains a separate, unlinked system for tracking customer complaints that does not incorporate any mechanism for identifying potential reportable adverse events as defined by the CMDR, failing to cross-reference complaint data with regulatory reporting thresholds. Option C. The documented complaint handling procedure adequately addresses the receipt, investigation, and evaluation of customer feedback, but lacks specific linkages to the CMDR criteria for reporting serious incidents to Health Canada, leading to potential underreporting of events that meet the CMDR definition of a serious injury. Option D. The internal audit program has not yet scheduled a specific audit focusing on the CMDR adverse event reporting requirements, despite the QMS being certified to ISO 13485-2016 for the past 3 years. The correct answer is C. The documented complaint handling procedure adequately addresses the receipt, investigation, and evaluation of customer feedback, but lacks specific linkages to the CMDR criteria for reporting serious incidents to Health Canada, leading to potential underreporting of events that meet the CMDR definition of a serious injury. Explanation: the Canadian Medical Devices Regulations, CMDR, require medical device manufacturers to establish and maintain a quality management system, QMS. For Class Roman II, Roman III, and Roman IV devices, the CMDR mandates that the QMS be compliant with ISO 13485-2016, or an equivalent standard recognized by Health Canada. A key aspect of this compliance is the establishment of a robust system for handling complaints and adverse events. Section 4.2 of ISO 13485-2016 outlines the general requirements for a QMS, including management responsibility, resource management, product realization and measurement, analysis and improvement. Specifically, Clause 8.2.1 addresses the information about product quality, which encompasses customer feedback and complaints. Clause 8.2.2 details complaint handling, requiring organizations to have a documented procedure for receiving, investigating, and evaluating complaints. Furthermore, the CMDR, particularly under Part Roman II, licensing of medical devices, requires manufacturers to report certain incidents to Health Canada. This reporting obligation is intricately linked to the complaint handling process. An auditor would assess the effectiveness of the QMS by verifying that the procedures for complaint handling align with both ISO 13485-2016 requirements and the specific reporting mandates of the CMDR. This includes ensuring that complaints are systematically recorded, investigated to determine root causes, and that appropriate corrective and preventive actions, CAPA, are implemented. The auditor would also scrutinize the process for identifying reportable incidents based on the CMDR criteria and ensuring timely submission of these reports to Health Canada. The linkage between a well-defined complaint handling system and the regulatory obligation to report adverse events is a critical area for an ISO 13485 auditor evaluating a Canadian market-bound medical device manufacturer's QMS. Question 18. During an audit of a Class Roman II medical device manufacturer producing sterile implantable components, an auditor is reviewing the process validation documentation for a critical dimensional characteristic measured using a coordinate measuring machine, CMM. The manufacturer has provided data from a gauge repeatability and reproducibility (GRR) study. What is the primary objective an auditor should verify regarding this GRR study in relation to ISO 13485, 2016, and relevant regulatory requirements like the FDA's Quality System Regulation, 21 CFR Part 820? Option A. The organization has verified that the CMM operator has completed the most recent training module on the specific software used for the GRR analysis and that all calibration records for the CMM are up to date. Option B. The organization has confirmed that the GRR percentage is below 10% of the total product tolerance and that this threshold is explicitly stated in their quality manual as the acceptable limit for all measurement systems. Option C. The organization has a documented procedure for conducting and evaluating GRR studies, and the results demonstrate that the measurement system's variability is acceptably low for the criticality of the dimension being measured, with evidence of actions taken if it was not. Option D. The organization has calculated the GRR using the statistical method prescribed by the specific industry standard for CMMs, ensuring a statistically significant sample size was used for the study. The correct answer is C. The organization has a documented procedure for conducting and evaluating GRR studies, and the results demonstrate that the measurement system's variability is acceptably low for the criticality of the dimension being measured, with evidence of actions taken if it was not. Explanation: the core principle of measurement system analysis, MSA, in the context of ISO 13485-2016, is to ensure that the measurement systems used for process control and product verification are capable of providing reliable and accurate data. When auditing a medical device manufacturer, an auditor must assess whether the organization has established a system to evaluate the variability introduced by the measurement process itself, separate from the inherent variability of the product or process being measured. This evaluation is crucial because inaccurate or imprecise measurements can lead to incorrect decisions regarding product acceptance, process adjustments, and ultimately, patient safety. A key aspect of MSA is determining the sources of measurement error, which can include gauge error, repeatability and reproducibility, linearity, bias, and stability. While specific statistical calculations like percent accuracy or percent tolerance are used to quantify these errors, the auditor's focus is on the systematic approach to identifying and controlling these errors. The organization must demonstrate that it has a documented procedure for MSA, that the methods used are appropriate for the critical characteristics being measured, and that the results of MSA studies are used to improve the measurement system or the process being measured. For instance, if an MSA study reveals that the measurement system's variability, often expressed as percent GRR or percent tolerance, exceeds acceptable limits, the organization must take corrective action, such as recalibrating the instrument, training the operators, or replacing the measurement device. The goal is to ensure that the measurement system's contribution to the overall observed variation is minimal and understood. The regulation does not mandate specific statistical methods for MSA, but it requires that the effectiveness of the measurement system be assured. Therefore, an auditor would look for evidence that the organization has a robust process for validating its measurement systems and acting upon the findings. Question 19. When auditing a medical device manufacturer's quality management system under ISO 13485-2016, an auditor discovers a recurring issue with a specific component failing incoming inspection. The organization has implemented several corrective actions over the past year, including supplier retraining and tighter incoming inspection criteria. However, the nonconformity persists, albeit at a reduced frequency. What is the most critical factor an auditor should assess to determine the effectiveness of the corrective actions taken? Option A. Documentation demonstrating that the corrective actions were implemented within the timeframe stipulated by the organization's internal procedures. Option B. Evidence that the root cause of the recurring nonconformity has been fully identified and addressed by the implemented corrective actions, leading to a statistically significant reduction in its occurrence. Option C. The number of personnel who participated in the investigation and implementation of the corrective actions. Option D. Records of the financial resources allocated and expended on the corrective action process for this specific nonconformity. The correct answer is B. Evidence that the root cause of the recurring nonconformity has been fully identified and addressed by the implemented corrective actions, leading to a statistically significant reduction in its occurrence. Explanation: the effectiveness of a corrective action is determined by its ability to prevent recurrence of the identified nonconformity. ISO 13485, 2016, specifically Clause 8.5.2, mandates that an organization must take action to eliminate the causes of nonconformities in order to prevent recurrence. This involves investigating the root cause of the nonconformity, implementing a corrective action to address that root cause, and then verifying that the corrective action has been effective. Verification of effectiveness is a critical step in the corrective action process. It involves confirming that the implemented action has indeed resolved the issue and that the nonconformity is not recurring. This verification might involve reviewing process data, conducting audits, or performing product testing. Without this verification, the organization cannot be assured that the corrective action has achieved its intended purpose, which is the prevention of recurrence. Therefore, the primary criterion for evaluating a corrective action's success is its demonstrated impact on preventing the nonconformity from happening again. Other factors like timeliness or cost are important for process efficiency, but do not define the fundamental success of the action itself in addressing the nonconformity's root cause. Question 20. An auditor is reviewing the environmental monitoring procedures for a Class C cleanroom used in the aseptic processing of implantable neurosurgical devices. The documented procedure includes regular viable microbial monitoring of air and surfaces, as well as personnel gowning and hand hygiene checks. However, the procedure lacks any defined parameters or action levels for monitoring non-viable airborne particulates, which aspect of ISO 13485, 2016 is most directly implicated by this omission in the context of contamination control for sterile medical devices. Option A. The establishment of a robust supplier evaluation process for critical cleanroom consumables. Option B. The validation of sterilization processes to ensure the destruction of microbial life. Option C. The implementation of a comprehensive risk management process for all manufacturing operations. Option D. The organization's determination and control of environmental conditions necessary to prevent contamination. The correct answer is D. The organization's determination and control of environmental conditions necessary to prevent contamination. Explanation: during an audit of a facility manufacturing sterile implantable devices, an auditor observes that the cleanroom environmental monitoring program includes sampling for microbial contamination on surfaces, in the air, and from personnel. However, the program does not specify the frequency of sampling for non-viable particulate matter in the cleanroom air, nor does it define action levels for these particulates. ISO 13485, 2016, specifically Clause 7.5.1, Production and Service Provision, emphasizes the need to establish and maintain conditions that prevent contamination. While the standard does not mandate specific particulate counts or frequencies, it requires the organization to determine and control environmental conditions necessary for the intended quality of the medical device. This includes controlling factors that could lead to contamination, such as airborne particulates. The absence of defined particulate monitoring parameters and action levels indicates a potential gap in the control of the manufacturing environment, which is crucial for preventing contamination of sterile medical devices. Effective contamination control for sterile products requires a comprehensive environmental monitoring strategy that addresses both viable and non-viable contaminants, with clearly defined limits and responses. The focus should be on demonstrating control over the manufacturing environment to ensure product safety and efficacy, as required by the quality management system. Question 21. When auditing a manufacturer of software as a medical device, SA-MD, intended for diagnostic image analysis, what specific aspect of the quality management system, as per ISO 13485, 2016, requires the most rigorous examination to ensure regulatory compliance and patient safety, considering the dynamic nature of software and its clinical application. Option A, the documented validation and verification activities that confirm the software's ability to accurately identify and classify anomalies in medical images according to its specified intended use and risk management file. Option B, the supplier evaluation process for hardware components used to run the SA-MD, ensuring their reliability and compatibility. Option C, the internal audit schedule and the competency of internal auditors to perform general quality system audits across all product lines. Option D, the management review minutes, confirming that strategic business decisions are documented and approved by top management. The correct answer is A, the documented validation and verification activities that confirm the software's ability to accurately identify and classify anomalies in medical images according to its specified intended use and risk management file. Explanation: the core of auditing software as a medical device, SA-MD, under ISO 13485, 2016 involves verifying the manufacturer's control over the software lifecycle, particularly its validation and verification processes, and how these relate to intended use and risk management. For SA-MD, the intended use is intrinsically linked to its function and the clinical context in which it operates. Therefore, an auditor must assess if the organization has established and maintains processes that ensure the software consistently meets its intended use and performance specifications throughout its lifecycle. This includes robust design and development controls, appropriate validation activities that confirm the software meets user needs and intended uses, and verification activities that confirm the software meets its design specifications. Furthermore, the auditor must consider the regulatory requirements applicable to SA-MD in the target markets, such as FDA's guidance on SA-MD or the EU's MDR, which often mandates specific approaches to software validation and post-market surveillance. The effectiveness of the quality management system is demonstrated by the integration of risk management principles, ISO 14971, throughout the software development lifecycle, ensuring that identified risks are mitigated and residual risks are acceptable. The ability to demonstrate traceability from user needs and intended use to design inputs, design outputs, verification and validation activities is paramount. This comprehensive approach ensures that the SA-MD is safe and effective for its intended purpose, a fundamental requirement of ISO 13485-2016. Question 22. During an audit of a manufacturer producing a Class D in vitro diagnostic device, what is the primary expectation for the proactive elements of their post-market surveillance (PMS) system as mandated by the EU Auditor, considering the device's high-risk classification and the regulatory emphasis on continuous performance evaluation? Option A. The manufacturer should rely solely on mandatory incident reporting as per the previous directive, with PMS activities limited to responding to complaints and adverse events that are formally reported. Option B. The manufacturer's PMS plan should prioritize the review of design validation documents and pre-market clinical evidence, with limited emphasis on ongoing real-world performance data collection for Class D devices. Option C. The manufacturer is expected to conduct post-market surveillance only when a specific complaint or adverse event is received, focusing on reactive investigations rather than proactive data gathering. Option D. The manufacturer must demonstrate a system for continuous collection and analysis of real-world performance data to proactively identify trends and emerging risks, with annual PMS reports serving as a minimum reporting frequency, and the PMPF evaluation report being a key component. The correct answer is D. The manufacturer must demonstrate a system for continuous collection and analysis of real-world performance data to proactively identify trends and emerging risks, with annual PMS reports serving as a minimum reporting frequency, and the PMPF evaluation report being a key component. Explanation: the EU In Vitro Diagnostic Regulation, IVDR, Regulation EU 2017/746, significantly impacts the post-market surveillance (PMS) requirements for IVD devices compared to the previous Directive 98/79/EC. A key change is the increased emphasis on proactive PMS, moving beyond passive reporting of incidents. Article 56 of the IVDR mandates that manufacturers establish a PMS plan as part of the quality management system, detailing how they will collect and review experience gained from devices placed on the market. This plan must include proactive measures. For a Class D IVD device, which represents the highest risk category, the IVDR requires a more rigorous PMS approach. This includes a continuous evaluation of the benefit-risk status and the identification of any emerging risks. The frequency of PMS reporting also becomes more stringent for high-risk devices. Specifically, for Class D IVDs, a PMS report must be drawn up at least annually, and for certain high-risk situations or significant changes, an updated PMS report may be required more frequently. Furthermore, the IVDR mandates the establishment of a post-market performance follow-up (PMPF) evaluation report, which is a crucial component of PMS, particularly for higher-risk devices. This report assesses the device's performance and safety throughout its lifecycle. Therefore, an auditor examining a Class D IVD manufacturer's PMS system under the IVDR would expect to see evidence of proactive data collection, a robust system for analyzing this data to identify trends and emerging risks, and a documented process for updating risk assessments and implementing corrective actions based on PMS findings, all occurring at frequency commensurate with the device's risk class. The annual PMS report is a minimum requirement, but the overall PMS system must be dynamic and responsive to real-world performance. Question 23. When auditing a medical device manufacturer intending to market products in Japan, an ISO 13485/2016 auditor must verify the organization's adherence to specific national regulatory requirements beyond the standard's general framework. Which of the following represents a critical area of focus for the auditor to ensure compliance with the Japanese Pharmaceutical and Medical Device Act, PMD Act, and its associated GMP guidelines? Option A. Examination of the company's risk management process to ensure it meets the requirements of ISO 14971/2019 and that no further risk assessment is necessary for compliance with other international regulations. Option B. Verification of the established procedures for obtaining and maintaining a marketing authorization, holder MA, or a designated Japanese representative, and ensuring their responsibilities are clearly defined and integrated into the QMS. Option C. Assessment of the company's internal audit schedule to ensure it covers all clauses of ISO 13485/2016 at least once every 3 years, without specific consideration for market-specific regulatory demands. Option D. Confirmation that the company has implemented a robust complaint handling system that aligns with the European Union's Medical Device Regulation, MDR, as a baseline for all international markets. The correct answer is B. Verification of the established procedures for obtaining and maintaining a marketing authorization, holder MA, or a designated Japanese representative, and ensuring their responsibilities are clearly defined and integrated into the QMS. Explanation: an auditor reviewing a medical device manufacturer's quality management system for compliance with ISO 13485/2016, specifically when exporting to Japan, must consider the Pharmaceutical and Medical Device Act, PMD Act, and its associated regulations. The PMD Act, enforced by the Ministry of Health, Labor and Welfare (MHLW), and the Pharmaceuticals and Medical Devices Agency, PMDA, outlines requirements for the manufacturing, marketing, and post-market surveillance of medical devices. For a manufacturer to obtain a marketing approval, or SHANEN, they must demonstrate compliance with the Japanese GMP, Good Manufacturing Practice, regulations, which are aligned with but not identical to ISO 13485. Key areas of divergence or specific emphasis include detailed requirements for clinical evaluation, post-market surveillance, and the role of a marketing authorization holder, MA, or a designated distributor in Japan. ISO 13485 provides a robust framework for a quality management system, but an auditor must verify that the organization has implemented specific controls and documentation to meet the additional and sometimes more stringent requirements of the Japanese regulatory landscape, such as those pertaining to the Foreign Manufacturer Accreditation System and specific product registration pathways. The auditor's role is to ensure that the QMS effectively addresses these international regulatory expectations beyond the baseline ISO 13485 requirements. Question 24. Consider a scenario where an auditor, MS, Anya Sharma, is scheduled to audit a medical device manufacturer's complaint handling process. MS. Sharma previously worked in the company's customer service department for 2 years, a department that directly feeds into the complaint handling system. Although she no longer works in that department and is now an independent auditor, she maintains close friendships with several former colleagues within customer service. Which of the following actions would best demonstrate adherence to the principles of objectivity and impartiality as required by ISO 13485, 2016 for an auditor? Option A. MS. Sharma should audit the complaint handling process, but focus her evaluation solely on the documented procedures and records, avoiding any interaction with personnel she previously worked with to maintain a degree of separation. Option B. MS. Sharma should inform the audit organization and the certification body of her prior employment and friendships, and recuse herself from auditing the specific areas directly impacted by her previous role and relationships, suggesting an alternative auditor for those sections. Option C. MS. Sharma should proceed with the audit as planned, relying on her prior knowledge of the company's operational flow to conduct a more efficient and thorough assessment of the complaint handling process. Option D. MS. Sharma should conduct the audit but flag her prior relationships in her audit report, allowing the auditee to review and validate her findings to ensure fairness and impartiality. The correct answer is B. MS. Sharma should inform the auditee organization and the certification body of her prior employment and friendships, and recuse herself from auditing the specific areas directly impacted by her previous role and relationships, suggesting an alternative auditor for those sections. Explanation: the core principle of objectivity and impartiality in auditing, as it pertains to ISO 13485-2016, mandates that an auditor must not allow bias, prejudice, or conflict of interest to compromise their judgment. This means an auditor cannot audit their own work or their department's work. Furthermore, they must avoid any situation where they have a financial interest, personal relationship, or any other connection that could reasonably be perceived to compromise their ability to conduct the audit without bias. The standard emphasizes that the auditor's findings and conclusions must be based solely on the evidence gathered during the audit process, adhering to the audit criteria. This ensures the integrity and credibility of the audit outcome, which is crucial for regulatory compliance and the effectiveness of the quality management system. For instance, if an auditor were to audit a process they were directly involved in developing or implementing, their familiarity might lead to overlooking nonconformities or being overly lenient, thus compromising the audit's objectivity. Similarly, if an auditor has a close personal relationship with an auditee, it could influence their reporting or assessment. Maintaining independence from the auditee's operations and decision-making processes is paramount. Question 25. During an audit of a small medical device manufacturer specializing in implantable neurostimulators, an auditor discovers a minor nonconformity related to documentation control. The quality manager, who is also the CEO's spouse, offers the auditor a significant personal gift as a token of appreciation for their thoroughness and understanding of the company's challenges. This offer is made in private, away from other auditees. What is the most appropriate ethical response for the auditor, considering the principles of ISO 13485, 2016 and general auditing ethics? Option A. Accept the gift but document it in the audit report as a potential influence, then proceed with the audit findings. Option B. Acknowledge the gesture, accept a small token, and then proceed with the audit, assuring the quality manager that it will not affect the findings. Option C. Politely but firmly decline the gift, explaining that accepting it would compromise professional objectivity and could be perceived as a conflict of interest, and continue with the audit as planned. Option D. Report the offer to the auditing body's management and request to be replaced on the audit, citing a potential conflict of interest. The correct answer is C. Politely but firmly decline the gift, explaining that accepting it would compromise professional objectivity and could be perceived as a conflict of interest, and continue with the audit as planned. Explanation: the core of ethical auditing within the medical device sector particularly under ISO 13485-2016, revolves around maintaining objectivity and integrity. Auditors must ensure their professional judgment is not compromised by personal relationships, financial interests, or undue influence from the auditee organization. This commitment to impartiality is fundamental to the credibility of the audit process and the quality management system itself. Clause 4. 1. One of ISO 13485, 2016 mandates that the organization establishes, documents, implements, and maintains a quality management system. While this clause focuses on the organization's responsibility, the auditor's role in verifying compliance necessitates an unwavering adherence to ethical principles. Specifically, an auditor's duty to report findings accurately and without bias, even when those findings might be unfavorable to the auditee or its personnel, is paramount. This includes refraining from accepting gifts or gratuities that could be perceived as influencing their judgment, thereby maintaining professional independence. The auditor's objective is to assess conformity to the standard and regulatory requirements, not to foster personal relationships or engage in activities that could create a conflict of interest. Therefore, the auditor must actively manage any potential conflicts that could impair their ability to conduct a fair and unbiased assessment, ensuring that the audit's outcomes are based solely on evidence. Question 26. When auditing a medical device manufacturer's process validation activities, what is the primary focus for an auditor to determine the adequacy of the validation planning phase, ensuring compliance with ISO 13485, 2016, and relevant regulatory requirements like the EU MDR? Option A. The final validation reports approval date and the subsequent release of the product for commercial distribution. Option B. The presence of a comprehensive, documented validation plan that clearly defines the scope, methodology, acceptance criteria, and responsibilities, with a clear link to the device's intended use and risk management file. Option C. The number of validation batches successfully completed and the statistical analysis of the output data from those batches. Option D. The availability of detailed training records for all personnel involved in executing the validation protocols. The correct answer is B. The presence of a comprehensive, documented validation plan that clearly defines the scope, methodology, acceptance criteria, and responsibilities, with a clear link to the device's intended use and risk management file. Explanation. The requirement for validation planning under ISO 13485, 2016, particularly in Clause 7. 1. Emphasizes the need for a documented approach to ensure that processes consistently produce results meeting predetermined specifications. When auditing a medical device manufacturer's validation activities, an auditor must assess whether the planning phase adequately addresses the intended use, critical parameters, and acceptance criteria. A robust validation plan is the cornerstone of demonstrating process control and product safety. It should outline the scope of the validation, the methods to be employed, the responsibilities of personnel involved, and the criteria for successful validation. Furthermore, it must consider the regulatory environment, such as the EU Medical Device Regulation, MDR, or FDA regulations, which mandate evidence of validation. The plan should also detail how any deviations encountered during validation will be managed and documented. The effectiveness of the validation plan is directly linked to its ability to provide objective evidence that the process is capable of consistently meeting its intended purpose and specifications. Therefore, the auditor's focus should be on the thoroughness and documented evidence within the plan itself, ensuring it aligns with the overall quality management system and regulatory expectations for medical devices. Question 27. An auditor is reviewing the record retention policy for a manufacturer of sterile, single-use surgical sutures. The organization has established a policy to retain all production and quality control records for a period of 5 years from the date of manufacture. However, a review of relevant national medical device regulations indicates a mandatory retention period of 7 years for records pertaining to sterile, single-use devices. Considering the principles of ISO 13485, 2016, and applicable regulatory mandates, what is the primary deficiency identified in the organization's record retention policy? Option A. The retention period for production and quality control records is insufficient to meet mandatory regulatory requirements. Option B. The retention period does not consider the expected lifetime of the surgical sutures. Option C. The organization should retain records indefinitely to ensure complete traceability. Option D. The organization has not adequately documented the rationale for the 5-year retention period. The correct answer is A. The retention period for production and quality control records is insufficient to meet mandatory regulatory requirements. Explanation: ISO 13485-2016 specifically in Clause 4.2.3 addresses the control of records. This clause mandates that organizations establish and maintain records to provide evidence of conformity to requirements and effective operation of the quality management system. The retention period for these records is not explicitly defined by a fixed number of years within the standard itself. Instead, the standard requires that the retention period be established and documented by the organization, taking into account regulatory requirements, the expected lifetime of the medical device, and the contractual obligations of the manufacturer. For instance, a manufacturer of a long-term implantable device would likely have different record retention requirements than a manufacturer of a single-use diagnostic kit. Regulatory requirements such as those from the FDA e.g. 21 CFR Part 820 or the EU MDR often specify minimum retention periods for various types of records, including design history files, complaint records, and post-market surveillance data. The organization's quality policy and risk management process also inform these decisions. Therefore, an auditor would assess the documented rationale behind the chosen retention periods to ensure they are adequate and comply with all applicable legal and regulatory frameworks, as well as the organization's own documented procedures. The absence of a specific duration in the standard necessitates a robust internal process for determining and justifying these periods. Question 28. A manufacturer of a Class Roman II implantable cardiac rhythm management device has been tracking complaint data for the past 18 months. While no serious adverse events have been reported, analysis of the complaint logs reveals a statistically significant increase in reports of transient, low-amplitude signal interference during initial device activation, primarily from patients implanted by a specific group of surgeons. This trend has not yet triggered a mandatory regulatory reporting threshold. What is the most appropriate preventive action for the quality management system auditor to assess for in this scenario, considering the proactive intent of ISO 13485-2016 and relevant regulatory expectations for medical device safety? Option A. Confirmation that the organization has updated its risk management file to include the observed trend of signal interference, without necessarily implementing any immediate process changes until a significant adverse event occurs. Option B. Assessment of whether the organization has communicated this trend to the specific group of surgeons, advising them to inform patients about the possibility of transient signal interference during initial activation. Option C. Verification that the organization has initiated a root cause investigation into the signal interference, examining design parameters, manufacturing tolerances, and sterilization effects on electronic components, and is documenting the implementation of appropriate controls to mitigate this potential issue before it escalates. Option D. Review of the complaint handling procedure to ensure it adequately categorizes and archives reports of transient signal interference, without requiring further analysis or action if the interference resolves spontaneously. The correct answer is C. Verification that the organization has initiated a root cause investigation into the signal interference, examining design parameters, manufacturing tolerances, and sterilization effects on electronic components, and is documenting the implementation of appropriate controls to mitigate this potential issue before it escalates. Explanation: the core principle of preventive action within ISO 13485-2016 is to identify and address potential nonconformities before they occur. This involves analyzing trends from various sources, including customer feedback, process performance data, product quality data, audit findings, and supplier performance. The goal is to proactively implement controls to mitigate risks. In the context of a medical device manufacturer producing a Class Roman II implantable device, a systematic review of complaint data might reveal a recurring pattern of minor device malfunctions reported by a specific user group, even though these malfunctions have not yet resulted in a reportable adverse event. Analyzing this trend, an auditor would expect the organization to have a robust preventive action process that triggers an investigation into the root cause of these reported minor malfunctions. This investigation would involve examining design controls, manufacturing processes, sterilization validation, and packaging integrity. Based on the findings, the organization should implement corrective actions, which in this context are preventive actions, to eliminate the potential for these minor malfunctions to escalate into serious issues or patient harm. For instance, if the analysis points to a subtle variation in a critical component's material lot, the preventive action might involve enhanced incoming inspection for that material or re-evaluation of the supplier qualification process. The emphasis is on acting upon potential problems indicated by data trends, rather than waiting for a nonconformity to manifest as a significant failure or a regulatory reportable event. This proactive approach is fundamental to ensuring the safety and effectiveness of medical devices, and aligns with the intent of regulatory requirements such as those outlined by the FDA's Quality System Regulation, 21 CFR Part 820, concerning corrective and preventive action. Question 29. During an audit of a medical device manufacturer producing a network-enabled diagnostic imaging system, an auditor is reviewing the organization's risk management process. The device transmits patient data over a hospital's internal network and can receive software updates remotely. What specific aspect of the risk management process is most critical for the auditor to examine to ensure compliance with ISO 13485-2016, particularly concerning the device's connectivity and potential cybersecurity vulnerabilities? Option A. The internal audit schedule for quality management system processes, ensuring that cybersecurity is a standalone audit topic irrespective of risk assessment findings. Option B. The documented procedures for identifying, analyzing, and evaluating cybersecurity threats and vulnerabilities throughout the device lifecycle, and the implementation of controls to mitigate identified risks. Option C. The supplier qualification process for third-party software components, focusing solely on their functional performance and not on their inherent security features. Option D. The marketing department's process for gathering customer feedback on device usability, as this indirectly influences user adherence to security protocols. Correct answer is B. The documented procedures for identifying, analyzing, and evaluating cybersecurity threats and vulnerabilities throughout the device lifecycle, and the implementation of controls to mitigate identified risks. Explanation. The core of an auditor's responsibility under ISO 13485-2016, especially concerning cybersecurity, is to verify that the organization has established and maintains processes to manage risks throughout the product lifecycle. This includes identifying potential cybersecurity threats and vulnerabilities that could impact the safety and performance of medical devices. For a connected medical device, such as an infusion pump that can be remotely monitored or controlled, potential cybersecurity risks include unauthorized access, data breaches, malware injection, or denial of service attacks. These risks could lead to incorrect dosage delivery, patient data compromise, or device malfunction, all of which directly impact patient safety. Therefore, an auditor would look for evidence that the organization has implemented risk management procedures that specifically address these cybersecurity threats. This involves identifying relevant regulatory requirements, such as those related to post-market surveillance and the need to address emerging risks, and ensuring that the organization's risk management process, as per Clause 7.1, adequately incorporates cybersecurity considerations. The organization must demonstrate that it has analyzed potential cybersecurity vulnerabilities, assessed their impact on device safety and performance, and implemented appropriate controls to mitigate these risks. This would include controls related to software security, network security, data encryption, and secure update mechanisms. The auditor's focus is on the effectiveness of the risk management system in identifying and mitigating cybersecurity-related hazards that could compromise the device's intended use and patient well-being. Question 30. When auditing a medical device manufacturer's quality management system for compliance with ISO 13485-2016, an auditor is examining the validation of a critical sterilization process where residual effects cannot be fully verified by subsequent testing. Which of the following verification activities by the auditor would most comprehensively assess the effectiveness of the implemented process validation? Option A. Examining the calibration records of the sterilization equipment to ensure it is functioning within its specified tolerances. Option B. Inspecting a sample of the sterilized devices from a recent production batch to confirm sterility through microbiological testing. Option C. Reviewing the complete documented evidence of the sterilization process validation, including the validation protocol, execution records, results analysis, and final approval report. Option D. Interviewing the production personnel responsible for operating the sterilization equipment to confirm their understanding of the process parameters. The correct answer is C. Reviewing the complete documented evidence of the sterilization process validation, including the validation protocol, execution records, results analysis, and final approval report. Explanation. The core of this question lies in understanding the verification requirements for process validation as stipulated by ISO 13485-2016, specifically within the context of a medical device manufacturer. Clause 7, 5, 6. Validation of processes for production and service provision mandates that where the results of a process cannot be fully verified by subsequent inspection and test, the process shall be validated. This validation shall demonstrate that the process consistently produces results meeting its predetermined specifications. Verification activities for such processes are crucial to ensure ongoing compliance and product safety. An auditor, when assessing the implementation of process validation, must look for evidence that the validation plan itself was adequate, that the execution of the validation was performed according to the plan, and that the results obtained were reviewed and approved by competent personnel. Furthermore, the auditor needs to confirm that the validation status of the process is clearly identified and maintained, and that any changes to the process are revalidated as necessary. The effectiveness of the validation is confirmed by reviewing the documented evidence of the validation activities, including the validation protocol, the actual test results, the analysis of those results against acceptance criteria, and the final validation report. The maintenance of records pertaining to the validation, including periodic revalidation if applicable, is also a key area for auditor scrutiny. Therefore, the most comprehensive verification activity an auditor would perform to assess the implementation of process validation is to review the documented evidence of the entire validation lifecycle, from planning through to ongoing monitoring and revalidation.